Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to another live webinar. Sorry, I didn't put this on quiet. Oh, apparently I did. Anyhow, glad to see a few of you here. I know I'm starting a little bit early, but I saw people that were waiting in the wings, so I figured I would go ahead and log on early to ask you what it is that I can help you with today as far as mental health, wellness. There's so many things that are changing so quickly with our understanding of mental health and how the body impacts the mind. It's really fascinating in my mind. But of course, I'm one of those people who really enjoys reading research articles. So, what questions do you have about developing compassion and how compassion impacts your mental health? Compassion is our ability to basically be kind. And I guess I should have looked up a synonym for compassion, but thinking about people who are compassionate, they tend to be kind to others. You can be compassionate with children. You can be compassionate with animals. You can also be compassionate with yourself and with others. And when we're not compassionate, I guess the antithesis of compassion is criticism. And when we are not compassionate, we tend to be angry and critical and of ourselves or of other people. And that doesn't tend to do a whole lot for developing a sense of safety and a sense of connection with one another. If I'm not being compassionate with myself, then I'm ignoring my own needs. I am ignoring my thoughts and wants, maybe, or I'm telling myself that I'm wrong. I am using that harsh inner critic. And we know that that contributes to feelings of anxiety and anger and guilt and shame and all that stuff. If I'm not being compassionate with others, then I may get angry at them for things that if I stepped back, I might go, hey, maybe they're not doing this intentionally to make my day bad, but they're having a really bad day. Or maybe, in their head, it is just so dark that they can't do any better. And I can have pity on them. I can have compassion on them. And it helps me deal with life on life's terms a lot better if I approach it from a perspective of compassion, trying to recognize that everybody's doing the best they can with the tools they have at any given time. They may not do it the same way I would, but they're trying to do their very best. And that's what matters. Appreciating the fact that people are trying to do their best goes a long way to helping people improve their mental health and helping people let go of unnecessary anger and shame and guilt. And Chase is right. Being kind is awesome. When we're kind, and you may not have known this, when we're kind, it releases oxytocin, our bonding hormone. And oxytocin is also a super potent anti-inflammatory chemical in our bodies. So it's a double benefit there. You don't just have to experience touch to release oxytocin. When you do something kind for someone else or something else, it does increase that oxytocin in your system. I remember when we lived in Florida, there was a place in St. Augustine where you could go and the squirrels would take peanuts out of your hand. And I mean, going there and doing that, it made me giddy like a little schoolgirl. It was just awesome. And that increased that feeling of oxytocin. When, obviously I've got animals all around here. And when I play with those animals, when I can do kind things for those animals, it makes my heart feel good. And when our heart feels good, that's when that oxytocin is being released. So if you've got inflammation, which if you're anxious, angry, depressed, or have an autoimmune issue, you've got inflammation. One strategy might be trying to increase that oxytocin some in order to help your body better manage some of that inflammation that's going on. So, hey, and there is a lot more research that's coming out just in waves, in tsunamis right now, that is indicating how much of our physical as well as mental health is impacted by inflammation. And inflammation, as you know, from watching my videos, when we're chronically stressed, when we don't have compassion for ourselves, when we're chronically angry at others, when we don't have compassion for them, it causes imbalances in our autonomic nervous system that leads to systemic inflammation. So again, one of those strategies that we can use to start addressing the inflammation, in addition to eating healthier and getting adequate quality sleep, is compassion, being nice, being compassionate with yourself on a daily basis. If you start your morning with compassion, it can go a long way because you avoid the shoulda, coulda, wouldas throughout the day. You acknowledge mindfully, this is where I'm at today. I may not be having an A day, so I'm going to be compassionate with myself. And instead of beating myself up for not having an A day, I'm going to accept that I'm doing the very best that I possibly can. And how much more empowering is that? How much more compassionate is that, as opposed to just being critical of yourself and feeling guilty or angry? Good morning, Ty. Good morning, Modern Doll. I see we have a lot of people that are concurrently viewing. What questions do you have about mental health? Obviously, I was doing my little diatribe on compassion while we waited for people to enter the chat room. But I am really here to do what I can to help you use your energy in a way that can help you move toward your rich and meaningful life. And for most people, that means being happy, feeling motivated, feeling like you've got support and people that you can trust, feeling okay with yourself, feeling like you've got good self-esteem. So again, what is it that would be helpful for you right now? Hello, Rajni. I am fine, thank you. How are you? I know a lot of people right now, at least in my area, we had another levee fail in northwestern Tennessee over the weekend, and there's just incredible, devastating flooding. Reminiscent of other floods and disasters we've had recently. And around here, and my guess is a lot of other places, California's had the fires, and people are exhausted. They're like, really? What next? And during a time when we're feeling exhausted because of what's been going on out there, outside of our own skin, outside of the walls of our own house, when we're exhausted because of a bunch of stuff that's going on that tugs at our heartstrings, but we may not be able to control, we need to be compassionate with ourselves. We need to acknowledge, hey, this is exhausting. And we also need to compassionately turn it off. Turn off the news, turn off Twitter, turn off whatever it is where you get your news, because sometimes you can only take, well, not sometimes, we can only take so much input of all of this negativity, especially negativity that there's nothing we can do to control it. Alexander says, I feel drained after spending time with my mother. I feel responsible for her and it's draining. That is exhausting. And I don't know what your history with your mom is, but or what's going on with her. If she's got dementia, then there are different things going on than, for example, if you were raised in a way that you were taught that it was your responsibility to take care of her. Either way, you have that feeling of responsibility and exhaustion right now. Codependency, if it stems from growing up in an environment where you had to take care of her, where you were responsible for her, what you're expressing right now is a symptom of codependency. And you probably developed it as a child because you did feel that in order for you to survive, in order for you to stay safe, you had to take care of your mom. And I'm wondering, in the present, do you have to take care of her? Or can she take care of herself if she chooses to? And it's hard. It's hard to set those boundaries and let people, sometimes force people, to do things for themselves that they can do instead of doing it for them. But it's important for people to do that because you need to use your energy in a way that helps you move toward your rich and meaningful life. And it doesn't mean you can't help her out when she needs help, but where's the difference? At what point are you doing things for her that she very well could do for herself right now? Breathing is an excellent, Lazy Philomath brings up, breathing is a strategy that can be used to increase happiness. And it really does. And you're like scratching your head going, how? When we breathe deeply, we trigger that relaxation response. We trigger that autonomic nervous system to turn down or turn off the stress response. That in and of itself helps us feel a lot happier, and it helps us conserve energy. When our stress response is always on, it's kind of like leaving the burner on low all day long, every day. Even when you're not cooking, you're leaving the burner on all day long. That wastes energy. Or maybe I should say the lights, because that's less dangerous. But it wastes electricity. When we have our stress response, even if it's just on a little bit, just kind of in the background, when it's on, it drains our energy. And that energy could be used to notice other things. When we are experiencing stress, what do we notice? We notice the threats. We don't notice the rainbows and the bunny rabbits and the positive side of things. When we're feeling stressed, we notice what could be or what are threats. And that's exhausting as well. And it drains our energy, and it can keep us from feeling happy. It can keep us from feeling like we can let our guard down to notice the good things. Breathing is a great strategy as well to increase oxygen. Your brain needs oxygen. Most of the time when people yawn, it's not because they're sleepy. It's because their brain is oxygen deprived, and that's a natural reflex to get more oxygen into the system. So some people find that breathing gets more oxygen where it needs to go, and it actually improves their energy and their mood. And when you've got improved energy, when you've got improved mood, when you're noticing the bunny rabbits and the rainbows, maybe in addition to the threats, we don't want to ignore them, of course, it's going to be easier to feel something besides distress. Whether that's happiness or curiosity or motivation or whatever word you're going to use for it. But that's an excellent point. Something as seemingly simple as breathing actually can go a long way. Another thing they've found is when you regularly practice deep breathing. Well, let me back up. I remember, 20 years ago, there was this infomercial on TV. And this woman claimed that if you just practice these deep breathing exercises every day, you would lose weight and be happier and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, huh? Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. Well, fast forward, now that we've got some more clinical research that's tangentially related, we know that when our stress response is engaged, that it throws the entire system out of whack, that we have more inflammation, that we have more leaky gut, that we have an imbalance in our gut microbiome, that we have more inflammation in our brain. So there's a lot of things that can start getting out of whack when we're stressed. But when we start doing that slow, deep breathing, we're turning off that stress response. We're allowing our body to relax some, which causes a cascade effect in a positive way. And that cascade effect can lead to improved sleep, improved insulin sensitivity, improved cortisol sensitivity, a whole host of things. So again, thank you for bringing that up, because it's been a long while since I've gone on a diatribe about breathing. But it can be fabulous. I encourage people to try it. Even if you're not one of those people who wants to do the square breathing, where we breathe in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, and repeat. That's fine. For me, I sing, and I sing loudly. But when you sing, you take in deep breaths and you project from your diaphragm, and it accomplishes a very similar, not only are you deep breathing, but the vibrations from your vocal cords and singing actually also works to doubly trigger, if you will, that vagus nerve. So there are things that you can do if you're not one of those people who's comfortable with deep breathing. What you're trying to do is slow your breathing rate and make it deeper. So what does that mean? Blowing up balloons. Oh my gosh, I remember when my kids were little and we would blow up balloons. And honestly, I'd feel dizzy by the end of it because I got so much oxygen in my brain. But that slows your breathing. Blowing bubbles, whether it's with bubble stuff or bubble gum, that can slow your breathing. So it doesn't have to be something that feels weird to you. Find something that feels comfortable, that may even feel fun, and engage in that to increase your breathing. I will do some look into clinical hypnotherapy, Rajni. I am not overly familiar with it at all. In the U.S., in most states, you have to have a special license in order to practice clinical hypnotherapy. Another person asks, is offline therapy better than online therapy? Also, is seeing a psychiatrist for medications and a different person for therapy okay? In the U.S., let me answer the second one first. In the U.S., most psychiatrists don't do therapy. So you have to see 2 different people. And therapists are not allowed to prescribe medications. So if you are on medications or want to be on medications, you have to be seeing a prescriber and a therapist. Not a problem. What we want to make sure is that the professionals are communicating. They're coordinating your care. And if your therapist sees changes that are good or bad, they're periodically communicating with the psychiatrist. And if the psychiatrist, for example, makes changes in your meds, they let the therapist know. Now, of course, you can let the therapist know too, but it's ideal if the professionals actually connect every once in a while, maybe every 6 months. As far as in-person or online therapy, that's really dependent on the individual. If the only way you can get therapy is online, then you might consider it. For a lot of people, the lack of connection that they feel in online therapy makes it feel less beneficial. They've done studies and back to our old friend oxytocin, they found that because when we are doing a video meeting, we are generally looking at the person on the screen and not into the camera. We don't have the oxytocin release that we do in real life. When we're looking at a person in real life, we're making eye contact with them. So that lack of eye contact is significant in how connected a person feels. Again, some people love online therapy, and if it works for you, more power to you, keep doing it. But if somebody feels disconnected when they're doing online therapy, and a lot of people do, I'm from an older generation. I know I do. I feel disconnected doing online therapy or online meetings, but then they may want to consider how they can do something that's in person. Even if every session's not in person, if you have a session in person once a month and then 3 online sessions, for example, that works for some people as well. So they get the best of both worlds, if you will. But it's a great question. And I'd be curious, for those of you who are watching right now and in the chat room, I'd be curious to know what your experiences are or what your beliefs are, if you haven't had the experience, about whether online therapy would be inferior to in-person therapy. Another thing I'll point out is a lot of the issue of whether it's good therapy or not has to do with the quality of the therapist. If you don't feel like you are being heard, if you don't feel like you're being respected and empowered, then it's going to be probably an ineffective connection, an ineffective therapy relationship. So that's another thing that you want to look at is, maybe you have this therapist that you think would be a great to work with, but they're in another state. So you can only see them online, or you can see somebody local who just, is just some random person that you don't seem to connect with. Well, your experience is probably going to be better with the person you trust online versus the person that you see in person that you don't have a lot of faith or confidence in. Congratulations, Modern Doll. I would encourage you to, I'm looking at those medications. I would encourage you to get a second opinion about the medications if you feel that I'm trying to choose my words carefully here. I hear that the weight gain is significant and problematic. No doubt. I hear that. I also hear the terror of changing something now that you've got some sobriety. And you've got 2 things that you're balancing right now. 122 days sober is huge. It's remarkable. That is, let me do math in my head. That's 4 months. Yeah, it's about 4 months, which is wonderful. However, you're still going through, your brain is still healing, your nervous system is still healing. You're still going through post-acute withdrawal, and you will be for a while. Just like relationships, we encourage people not to make any major changes or get into relationships in their first year or so of sobriety. Part of that is because the nervous system is healing and we need to be kind to it. Now, as far as what to do about it, again, I would get a second opinion because it sounds like one doctor said one thing, the other doctor said something else. Let's get a tiebreaker. A couple of those medications, and I'm not going to call out which ones, but a couple of those medications what I have seen in my clinical work when people have taken them is that those medications tend to make them fatigued, not move around as much, and they tend to gain weight because of their fatigue and not burning as many calories. There are other options that are out there. Your doctor could potentially add yet another medication, but consider the side effects. Consider what you want to do and how you might go about doing it. I would also encourage you to evaluate your weight gain. Think back. When did you start gaining weight? I mean, you didn't gain that much weight in 4 months. So the weight gain has probably started before you got sober. Okay, well, that's cool. We just want to figure out, when did that weight gain start in relation to the medications you were taking? And did it get worse or better when you started taking those medications? What is it that you believe is contributing to your weight gain? Is it that one or more of those medications makes you hungry all the time? Is it that one or more of those medications is disrupting your sleep, so your circadian rhythms are out of balance? Is it that one or more of those medications makes you feel exhausted, so you have a hard time doing things throughout the day, even just being active, because you're so stinking exhausted? Or is there something else? There may be something else there too. Sometimes when people quit using, whatever drug, and it can be everything from nicotine to methamphetamines and everything in between, okay? They will self-medicate with food. And I saw that a lot in residential treatment. People would come in who were objectively, nutritionally not deficient, but they would gain an incredible amount of weight in 30 days, because when I first took over residential, we were getting donations from a bread store that it was almost always like Entenmann's pastries and stuff. So we were giving people these high fat, high sugar, high dopamine, high serotonin releasing foods. And yeah, they were eating them like what they were, candy. And so they were gaining a lot of weight, but that was how they were self-medicating their lack of, or their perceived lack of dopamine and serotonin. Because remember, when you quit using, your brain is expecting a whole lot more of those neurotransmitters than it's getting. So it starts craving those. And so that would be another thing I would look at is, have your eating habits changed? And if so, are you unintentionally self-medicating with feel-good foods? So there's a lot of different reasons, but once you figure out when the weight gain started, what makes it worse, when did the medication come into there, into the mix, and did it make it worse or better? And what actually triggers you to eat now? Is it hunger or is it craving? And there's a little bit of a difference. So again, congratulations on that 122 days. That's huge. And I commend you for recognizing that changing things right now in your treatment program could be challenging at best and devastating at worst. And with adequate support from your, whether you have a AA sponsor or some other kind of sponsor support group, with adequate support from your peeps during this process, during this whatever changes you decide to make, it is possible to make those changes. Ty says, there is devastation nationwide, and I have some family members going through life changes due to old age that require breathing apparatus. and I find myself distancing from the heartache. I feel as if this year has started out pretty somber. I hear you, and I don't disagree. Recognizing what is in your control and what is out of your control is one thing. And it's something I struggle with. I heard about the levee breaking yesterday, and my first thought was, okay, let's pack it up and go over there and help. And I realized that I'm not going to be any use to them right now. Mental health is not what they need. And until the floodwaters subside, there's really not even any cleanup to be done. So I had to kind of table that and say, I can have compassion for them. I can pray for them. I can be aware of when they do need help and potentially go out to help them then. But right now, dwelling on that is only going to drain the energy that I could be saving up to help them out. Recognizing what's going well, or at least okay, in your rich and meaningful life. I hear you identifying what's not going well. And that's our natural tendency to focus on the stressors or the threats. But insisting in your mind, insisting that you take stock regularly, preferably at least daily, of the things that are going okay in your rich and meaningful life, as well as the things that may not be going okay. But that way you have a little bit more balance, so it doesn't feel like everything's going to hell in a handbasket, as my mother would say. That can be really helpful. Be compassionate with yourself. Recognize that your heart hurts. Recognize that seeing your loved ones not be able to breathe on their own anymore, that makes you even more aware of their vulnerability. That makes you even more aware of how fragile life is, and that can trigger anticipatory grief. Knowing that, all right, this is a sign that it won't be that much longer before they pass on. Now, there are a lot of people, I don't know what kind of breathing apparatus your family member has, but there are a lot of people with COPD that have oxygen tanks and cannulas and stuff and, live for decades. My grandfather did. Oh, bless his heart. He was too stubborn to let some little thing like only having one lung cause him a problem. So based on the facts in this context at this time, is whatever condition is causing them to have to wear that, is it progressive? And what are the doctors saying about their prognosis at this time? And that can give you a little bit more perspective, but also recognizing, and this one is really hard for me, very hard for me, recognizing that they're here right now and being worried about what's going to happen next, starting to grieve before they've even passed, robs you from the energy you could spend nurturing that relationship now and appreciating what time you have left with them. And I'm not saying any of that is easy. I'm going through it right now, and it is a moment by moment thing. It's not even a daily struggle. It's a moment by moment thing to remind myself that, nope, I'm not going to think about what could or will happen. I'm going to think about what's going on right now. And I'm going to appreciate the time I still have left with them. I'm not going to think about the stuff that I can't control. I'm going to figure out how to use my energy on what I can control in the moment. And then if and when a time comes that I can address some of these other things that are tugging at my heart, then I can make that decision. I can't remember. It's possible I had a good one, but I can't remember ever having a good Valentine's Day. And we got confirmation of Brewster's cancer on Valentine's Day, and it just kind of felt like a dagger through the heart. But I hear what you're saying about it can feel like, one thing after another, and it's just exhausting and somber, and you're looking for something to give you hope, something to say, we're about to maybe turn a corner, but we've turned a corner and we're actually going up now. I think we're all still waiting for that. And I'm impatient. I get impatient because the microwave doesn't heat my water fast enough. So, of course, I'm impatient about other types of change. And I think a lot of people are still struggling to find that hope, because every time we turn on the TV, it's this is being done wrong, or this was done wrong, or this person committed this crime, or this tragedy happened. It's like, oh my gosh, make it stop. I do encourage people, again, look at your vision board for your rich and meaningful life every day, because that can help you focus back closer to home, closer to the things that are important in your life and the things that you may have the ability to influence. Call me glitter. I hear what I hear what you're saying about your creative ideas in the middle of the night or the early morning. And interestingly enough, a lot of that has to do with the fact that your autopilot is turned off. That's when you get up and you engage that autopilot and you start, drinking your coffee or making your breakfast, getting ready for work, putting one foot in front of the other, your prefrontal cortex, your rational mind is sort of engaged, and the other part of your brain is on autopilot doing what needs to be done. When it's the middle of the night and you wake up, none of that's engaged. And that's when those creative juices can all of a sudden pop into your head. First thing when you get up, when I was in graduate school, I had this one class and we had a book that we had to complete, and we had to journal. I know, I hate journaling, but we had to journal every morning before we got out of bed. Before we put our foot on the floor, we needed to write in that journal. And it did teach me a lot about how much I suppress during the day of my creativity. Once I kick into autopilot, once I start thinking about the things that I've got to do. As far as the exact neural mechanisms of what's happening, that's not something I really know very well, but I do know what you're saying is true. And I do know it has something to do with our autopilot. And for a lot of people, those bursts of creativity may come when they are sort of least expecting it. It's interesting that you point out you don't have energy during the day. So I'm wondering how well you're actually sleeping at night, and if there's a relationship between how much sleep you have and how much creativity you do or don't have during the day. Ty points out that online therapy can be ideal when they're trucking over the road. Yeah. If you are somebody like a pilot or a trucker or somebody who's not in the same destination every single Wednesday, then online therapy can be really awesome at helping you connect with the services you need. Hola, Ivan. Welcome. Rajni believes that offline therapy is more efficient and effective than online therapy, which We all have our preferences. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed Mark's comment that he was diagnosed with CPTSD on Tuesday. Um, and yeah, it is just eye opening when you start to recognize how chronic stress and chronic, as a result of feeling powerless and stuck and unable to escape, how that impacts the entire body, how that impacts your relationship with yourself, with others, how that impacts your mood and your ability to regulate your mood, how it impacts your ability to think clearly, to pay attention, to solve problems, how it impacts how safe you feel in an environment, because the more trauma you have, a lot of times the more triggers there are in the environment. Hopefully, now that you have that diagnosis, you'll be able to start unraveling that and healing your nervous system in order to heal every other piece of your life. Oops. Okay, Modern Doll. If you think that part of your weight gain is due to self-medicating through food, excellent insight. It's important to find something to replace that before you get rid of it. Before you say, okay, well, I'm not going to eat anymore to self-medicate, you need something to replace it. So talk with your doctor or your therapist, or your sponsor, or whomever is a good person to help you figure out what you can do in other ways, shall I say, other healthier ways to increase your dopamine and your serotonin. They exist. It just takes some time to find what works for you and what's effective in the moment. Slash says, I'm going through a lot of that now. I want the future to be so bright and I want to fix so much of what's going on in my life, but I have to live in the now and make my now as good as possible. That's true. And when your now is as good as possible, that's going to make your next moment even better, because one positive change in any area of your life is likely going to make positive changes in every area of your life. So just one baby steps. What is it you can do to get one little step closer to your rich and meaningful life today? What is it that you can do today? Not, some big, huge task. What is it, something you can do today? Maybe that's starting to do more deep breathing to turn on that relaxation response. Maybe it's eating slightly better. Maybe it's trying to start resetting your circadian rhythms, or journaling so you can identify the sources of your stress. I don't know, but you do make a great point that by focusing on using your energy right now, you're actually making the changes. You are making positive changes in the moment, which are only going to grow and enhance your forward movement. It is, especially right now with everything changing so much, Call Me Glitter, it is so natural to have a fear of the future because we don't know what's coming next. I mean, with the advent of AI, things have changed so rapidly with, a lot of other things that are going on politically as well as geologically, I guess. The the storms and the fires and everything, it's hard to know what's going to come next, if it's going to be good, if it's going to be bad. So thinking about all of the what ifs is exhausting. It is terrifying, and it can be exhausting because you can't control things that haven't happened yet. You can't predict and you can't control. Focusing on what you have right now and focusing on the things that you can control. I know if I use my energy to nurture some relationships, relationships with particular people, I know that in the future that it's highly likely that they will be there for me. I know if I use my energy to work out and to try to cook healthy meals, that it is much more likely that I will not develop certain diseases, or I'll be able to recover from them easier. So that's the future stuff out there that I can't predict, but using my energy to do what I can to prevent bad things and to nurture good things is how I choose to move forward. Well, Spartan raises a good point that some people who are autistic, for example, may not need to perform to alter their face to match how the therapist's face looks. They may not have to try to force those nonverbals. So it may be less stressful. And great. If that works for you, more power to you. What I encourage people is to find what feels right and what feels like it will work, because it is different for every person. People with extreme social anxiety may have difficulty in-person therapy where they feel more comfortable online. So it is definitely a very individualized decision. What do you do when a clinical expert acts in a narcissistic manner to the point that they write an article about you calling you an abuser in a twist of the facts? If they wrote an article about you and they are a clinician, that's likely a violation of your HIPAA rights. And I would report that to their ethics board and maybe even to whoever you report HIPAA violations to. Sorry, it's been a while since I've looked that one up. I like that analogy, space-time. Water yourself and grow little by little. I'm actually, have my spring garden out that I'm hoping this next freeze is not going to absolutely kill off. But I'm starting my summer garden, and I noticed this morning that a bunch of my little tomato plants are peeping out. And I mean, tomato seeds are so itty bitty, especially for like your cherry tomatoes. Those are so tiny, and the plants get to be so stinking huge. I mean, I have to attach them to fences in order to keep them from toppling over. And so it's just fascinating how one little seed, one little effort, if you nurture it, can grow into something masterful. What other questions y'all have? Prince asks, how do I get my creative juices flowing? That depends on the person. What we were talking about is the fact that for a lot of people, their creative juices, so to speak, are more accessible first thing in the morning before they start thinking about everything they've got to do and engaging their autopilot. So before their feet hit the floor. That's not true for everybody, but for a lot of us. And I don't want to overgeneralize and say for a lot of us who tend to be less creative, but we have creativity in different ways. And some of the creative stuff that is outside of my comfort zone, I can access a lot better before I kick into autopilot where I start criticizing myself and everything else. Creative juices can be stimulated a lot of ways. And I'm curious what y'all do, because I think all of us have had times when we've had to be creative. For me, one of the ways that I find to stimulate my creative juices is to unplug. If I have my phone, if I have the TV on, if I have anything else, I tend to get distracted. I also have spiral notebooks everywhere, and I write. They've actually done studies, and they found that when you're writing, if you keep your pencil moving, it actually unblocks some of the cognitive roadblocks we have and can help free up creativity, which is why mind mapping is so effective sometimes. And I've put away my whiteboard, but I have a huge whiteboard. And when I need to try to figure something out to stimulate some creativity, I'll get out my whiteboard, my dry erase markers, and I'll just start writing. And I'll write, and I'll put a circle around it, and I'll draw a line, and I'll write whatever comes into my mind next. No editing, no filtering, just put it all out there. Can always erase it later, but that works for me. Now, like I said, I'm not super creative. I'm not a artist. So stimulating those kinds of juices is often a little bit different. But for me, just getting stuff out there and getting past the inner critic that says, well, that's a stupid idea, is huge. And that's great, Call Me Glitter, that you have acknowledged that you don't want to work your life away and you don't want to, as you put it, be somebody's puppet. That's wonderful. It reminds me in addiction counseling mainly, but I think this can be true for other sources of counseling. I just haven't watched it from that perspective. The movie Pinocchio is so incredibly metaphorical. I encourage people to watch it because every character in Pinocchio can often be traced to somebody in a person's life who is in recovery from addiction. But breaking those strings. For Pinocchio, the strings were the addiction. And breaking those strings. I've got no strings to hold me down, to make me fret or make me frown. I had strings, but now I'm free. There are no strings on me. Love that little song. So anyway, that might be an interesting and creative video that you can watch for getting some metaphors flowing. Well, Sebastian, without knowing better what behaviors your child's mother is doing that you're considering narcissistic abuse, I have a real hard time answering that question. And yes, it is important to understand the impact that a parent, even if the parent is kind to a child, if they are hateful to the child's other parent, that can feel very terrifying and create a lot of chaos and drama and anxiety for the child. How do you decouple a physical trigger causing a downward spiral? I have screws in my ankle that now bind up painfully when I get triggered, and that makes it harder to ground myself than before. One of the things, you can use guided imagery to focus, intentionally turn your focus to something else. Now, if you're dealing with excruciating pain, that may not be as effective. Putting ice on your ankle could be helpful because you're starting to numb that up. Completely alternate, putting your hands in ice. So you have that pain down there, but it pales in comparison to the pain of having your wrists in ice buckets. That can be another strategy for decoupling, decoupling, as you said, from the trigger. I would start with those. I would also encourage you to see your doctor to see if there's something going on with those screws that are problematic and contributing to your pain that they can do something about. Celestia, I'm not familiar with Caroline Leaf's neurocycle. Mind mapping is basically just starting with a core center point and connecting all the thoughts you're having to it. Just continually writing, continually keeping that pencil or pen moving in order to help get those thoughts out that would ordinarily potentially be censored. Prince Yante, I always go for the original version of Pinocchio from like 1965 or something. I'm here trying to heal after 6 years. My ex-wife was diagnosed with leukemia. She's alive and living her life, but I have stayed in a vigil state for long periods of time. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Ivan. Now I have more compassion for the person I was that could have made decisions, and now trying to heal by myself and with the help of my therapist and bloggers and communities like this one. And that's wonderful. There can be a lot of regrets when we find that somebody we love has been diagnosed with a terminal illness, or even gets into a really bad car wreck or something and could have died. There is often this period of reflection where we think back to things we could have done better or should have done better. And we can spend a lot of time beating ourselves up over the coulda, shoulda, wouldas. And it sounds like now you're trying to redirect that energy to the present. I can't change that, but I can do better now. And that is excellent that you found that sense of personal power to move, to change the direction of your energy. When you don't feel confident because of your appearance, that could be because of actual flaws in your appearance, or it could be because of perceived flaws in your appearance, and what we call body dysmorphic disorder. Either way, you feel like there's a flaw in your appearance and it makes you self-conscious. And it's vital that your therapist is able to empathize with that and validate. They don't have to agree. They have to validate that that's how you feel and help you figure out strategies to embrace your rich and meaningful life and have those flaws. Those are flaws you may not be able to change. And okay, if not, how can you live your richest and most meaningful life and have those flaws at the same time? What do those flaws mean? what objectively has happened to you as a result of having those flaws. And those are things that you can talk about with a therapist. But if you don't feel like they are understanding how deeply it impacts your confidence and your esteem and your ability to interact with others and move toward your rich and meaningful life, then you may need to look for another therapist, honestly. Spacetime says we'll be moving into a new home and there are so many emotions, thoughts, and feelings from several parts, navigating the switching and flashbacks as well. What would I recommend for coping? Excuse me. First thing is take it slow. Establish a sense of safety in this new environment. And if there are things about the home that you're leaving that you're going to miss, that you're sorry about, that you're going to feel disconnected from, try to figure out how to stay connected. Pictures, for example. We're getting ready to sell the first house that we ever owned. We bought together right after we got married, and we raised our kids in it. And, you know, I still think of the rooms as that was Sean's bedroom, that was Haley's bedroom. And I have lots of memories there. And the thought of selling it is bittersweet. I mean, yeah, there are some bad memories there, but there are a lot of good memories that I want to keep and I fear losing. So keeping pictures and keeping acknowledgments of what I want to remember from the old place, and then infusing them into the new place and having reminders of my kids as they grew up in the new place. I'm not going to be able to walk into a room and remember, you know, Haley sitting there shoving powdered donuts into her face literally as fast as she could when she was 3, which was adorable. But, you know, I won't have those same triggers, but I can move the positive triggers with me. I can make the new house feel safe and inviting and empowering and nurturing. I can make it feel like a home. A house is walls. A home has energy. And what energy I choose to bring to it is important. And doing it slowly. You know, maybe not moving everything in all at once and decorating everything all at once. You may have to move it all in, but one room at a time. What do I want this room to say? When I walk into this room, what do I feel? And how can I make myself feel safe and empowered and content in this room? And then go to the next room and unpack that and decorate that. And you may find that you have different themes in different rooms based on what you want to feel, or based on that what aspect of your person that you're nurturing in that room. Call Me Glitter says, can you explain the autopilot again? I can't go to bed at night because I get tired. Call Me Glitter, what I'm hearing, and this is not a diagnosis because I don't have enough information to make a diagnosis, but one of the things I'm hearing is that your circadian rhythms are completely miscalibrated. And if you're not getting sleepy at sleep time, and then you're waking up throughout the night and you're tired all day long, that tells me that your cortisol, for one, your cortisol response is out of balance. When our circadian rhythms are in balance, when we wake up, our cortisol's highest. Throughout the day, it gradually declines. When it's time to go to bed, our cortisol is the lowest. And when that gets out of whack, it also impacts the availability of our hormones and our neurotransmitters and our hunger and satiation cues. It throws everything out of balance. that's one thing I would look at to see, are there things you can do to improve your sleep hygiene and start getting your circadian rhythms set. Circadian rhythms are set by light, activity, and temperature. Just like kids, they come home from school, they play, they eat dinner, they take a bath, they read a story, they go to bed. That cues their body up, and the body knows kind of what's coming next. After they eat dinner, the body knows, well, it's time for bath. And when they take their bath, they get out, they start cooling down because they're not moving around as much as they settle down to read a book, and then they can get to sleep. And creating a routine like that for yourself is important. As adults, we can also set anchors throughout our day. We can eat at the same time, eat breakfast at the same time every morning, eat lunch at the same time every day, eat dinner at the same time every day. And all of that helps to anchor your circadian rhythms and can greatly help improve your sleep. There's also issues of stress and anxiety that may be keeping you from sleeping. I don't know, you talk about getting energy during times of ideas. You start getting energy and you get excited. It's like, oh, I'm having this breakthrough. Well, that's wonderful, but we need to figure out how to move that breakthrough to a different time or adjust your circadian rhythms accordingly. So I would be curious to explore what it is about your breakthroughs that happen right before you go to bed that are keeping you up at night. The timing is very interesting, and the timing is important because something's different when you're having those breakthroughs and getting those ideas. And I almost wonder whether it's your brain's way of saying, I don't want to go to bed. There's something, I don't feel safe going to sleep for some reason. So, hey, here's an idea. I'm just kind of spitballing here, but I believe all behavior is communication, and your body's trying to tell you something. Is there any correlation between CPTSD and being affected by loud noises? Yes. CPTSD, when people have chronic post-traumatic stress disorder or complex post-traumatic stress disorder, the stress response stays active. It's like a soldier in a foxhole. They're not going to sleep very well. They may doze off, but they're going to wake right up. You're never able to truly relax. So when somebody bangs a loud noise, yeah, it probably does send you into the stratosphere. And that makes sense because your stress response was already there and poised and waiting to, spring into action to keep you safe. Alrighty, everybody. It has been a wonderful hour that we've been talking, and I will be here next Monday, same time, same station. In the meantime, you can always go to docsnipes.com/clones, CLONES, and ask my AI any questions you have. And my AI has been educated specifically on all of my videos on the YouTube channel and the books that I've written and a few other articles. So it will give you a response that's pretty close to what I would have said. I've told it not to go out into the internet and hither and yon and pull up a bunch of stuff that I haven't reviewed. So I told it to stay focused on those 2,000 hours of content. So if I haven't answered your question, please feel free to ask the AI. Otherwise, I'll see you next week on Monday.